Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Cultural heritage and natural history of a nation has a very high value and is very unique. They reflect and shape the values, beliefs, and aspirations, thereby defining a people's national identity. It is very important to preserve our culture and heritage because it keeps our integrity as people. And of course, here in Egypt, we are very rich in terms of history and culture. And we are going to discuss the various means of raising the awareness and the significance of raising the awareness for people regarding cultural heritage and means of preserving cultural heritage with our prominent guest, Dr. Yasmin Shazly, Egyptologist. Good day to you, Dr. Yasmin.
Good day.
Dr. Yasmin, how to raise awareness of the significance of our monuments? This is something that actually negatively affected for some years the image. We have seen people drawing their names on the stones of the pyramids, for example. They lack the awareness that they are damaging their own culture, their own history, their own rich heritage. So how to raise awareness in this regard?
Of course, there are many, many ways to raise awareness. One way is, of course, the media has to play a very important role in this. I think we need more programs and documentaries in Arabic on Egyptian television that talk about heritage in a more up-to-date and innovative way, not the antiquated way that we're used to.
Yes.
Seeing it on television and in the media.
Yes.
School curricula, by updating the school curricula. Introducing more Arabic children's books that talk about Egyptian heritage that are engaging and interesting to the children. Maybe, of course, I know that the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities is very actively increasing the number of public engagement programs in museums and children's programs in museums, and these programs can attract a lot of children. They can teach them about heritage in an interesting and engaging way, like maybe introducing treasure hunts where they're supposed to search for maybe reach the mask of Tutankhamun and try to navigate through the museum and find certain objects in order to reach the mask of Tutankhamun. Once they know the value of heritage, their heritage, they will take care of it.
Of course. And at the past, schools used to organize school trips to archaeological sites. We used to go to the pyramids, to the museums, but as kids, many of us went as just part of a regular school trip without actually having the enthusiasm or knowledge about the purpose, the whole purpose of that trip. Why are we going? What's the point of going there? So I believe that to complete what you have just kindly said, we need also to work on that particular point.
Yes, definitely. I worked at the Egyptian Museum for several years, and I used to see the children who came on school trips to the museum and how completely uninterested they were in the objects. They were just playing with their peers, not really looking at the objects. So I think it's very important to prepare the teachers before the field trip. So I think the teacher should come to the museum in advance, meet with someone from the museum, the public engagement department, and be prepared for how to prepare the students for the field trip and give them certain do's and don'ts at the museum. Like, for example, they're not supposed to touch the object. They're supposed to try and listen to whoever's explaining the collection to them. Certain rules of etiquette in the museum. Not to bother the tourists, for example, because I've seen school children bothering tourists in the museum. And I think they should also be accompanied by someone because the teacher, no matter what, is not a specialist. So if they are accompanied by someone from the museum who has experience explaining things to children, that would also make it more useful.
Yes. Dr. Yasmin, perhaps many of my generation, their parents were very keen to take them, or our parents, the parents of our generation, were very keen to take us to museums and to tell us about the history of the nation, because many of our parents or grandparents took part in significant political events and the wars and so on. Many in my family, for example, used to take us to Alamein Museum and tell us about the war in Alamein and the significance of this area. Yes, not many parents did that, but it was something that our generation was lucky to do, and I found that this was diminishing as parents grew older. What do you think of that? What's the role of parents in injecting or strengthening the sense of belonging to the country in their children?
No, the role of parents is extremely important. My parents were the ones who influenced me and made me interested in studying Egyptology in the first place. It's extremely important, but there are many parents who are not interested themselves. So it's important to get the parents interested first, and then they will influence their children. And again, as I said, that the role of the media is very important. Producing good quality films and documentaries about Egyptian history is important. And something like, you know, the mummy parade, that was very effective.
Indeed.
I went to the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization after the parade for a meeting, and the number of visitors was unbelievable.
Yes. Yeah, I thought so too, because as we were watching the parade, I found that, you know, that shot where the young children were all coming as part of. Now that to me was very important, because it focuses on the children as being part of belonging and this sense of identity, and how they were looking forward to that with great pride and big smile on their faces.
Yes, and even, you know, the song, the hymn to Isis that was sung in the ancient Egyptian language, that got people very interested, because people did not realize that the ancient Egyptian language, of course they knew it was spoken, but they were wondering, so how do we know how it was pronounced? And they started asking questions and researching and trying to find out how you know, Egyptologists found out how the ancient Egyptian language was pronounced. And even, you know, social media influencers started addressing this issue in their videos.
Yes. In the past few years, Dr. Yasmin, Egypt has been making a revolution in its museums, whether renovating the old ones or establishing new museums in various parts of the country. So we have seen, for example, the Carriages Museum in Abdin, the new museums in Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada, of course, the Museum of Egyptian Civilization, and we're looking forward to the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum, GEM. All these museums and many more, Egyptians now started shifting or adopting a new attitude, if we may say, towards museums. Did you notice that as an expert?
Yes, of course, I did. And even, you know, the idea behind the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization is revolutionary, because it's the first museum to you know, to focus on the Egyptian civilization as a whole, from its very beginning till modern times. And this helps also get Egyptians to feel a sense of belonging to the ancient civilization and the different periods of Egyptian history, because it emphasizes the continuity.
Yes. For many countries, they used filming part of movies or films or series or documentaries in certain places to further promote those places. So do you think that we can actually do that here in Egypt? Do you think that if we do this idea of filming in museums, that would actually attract more people to visit the museums from around the world?
Definitely. And we should also make sure that the rules, because sometimes the rules can be prohibitive. We have to make sure that we encourage people to come and film in the museums and make it easier for them.
Yes.
To get permissions. And I think, you know, film and it can really attract people to a museum or any site. Because think of even, you know, the local series, Grand Hotel.
Yes, yes, yes,
This,
yes, yes.
it was about, it was about murder. So it wasn't really about Aswan. But
the charm of the place itself.
Yeah, the way it was filmed.
Yes.
And the way it showed how the beauty of Aswan made everyone want to go to Aswan.
Of course, yes, you're very right. Dr. Yasmin, the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization hosted the final draw of the 2021 World Men's Handball Championship. How do you view holding a sport event in the country, archaeological sites? Again, would that attract more visitors to the country?
It depends, of course, on how it's done. Like this particular event was a good idea because it promoted the museum without harming it. So as long as the event, you're not going to play a football match in Karnak Temple, for example. So it depends on what kind of event and how it's organized and how and the fact that it doesn't harm keeping in mind that it doesn't harm the site or the museum.
Yes. As we are looking forward to the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum, what are your expectations? Because this museum was due to be inaugurated by the end of last year, 2020, but of course due to the pandemic, it was postponed, and all the eyes of the world are so looking forward to the event, especially after the announcement that a huge parade for King Tut's treasures will be also paraded to the museum. How do you see that?
Well, it's a very, very highly anticipated event, and the whole world is watching. And the museum itself is very impressive. And even without, you know, without any promotion or any parade, the museum itself, everyone comes to Egypt wanting to see the collection of Tutankhamun.
Yes.
So, but I'm sure the parade is going to be even more impressive than the mummy parade, and it's going to be really breathtaking. But of course, we have to take advantage of and keep the momentum, because we don't want it to be, you know, something that's highly anticipated. People get very excited, and then I'm talking about Egyptian visitors, because tourists will always want to. Those who come to Egypt will always want to see Tutankhamun. So I think that's a given.
Yes.
But for something like the Mummy Parade and the Tutankhamun Parade, I think we have to make sure we keep the momentum and keep Egyptians interested. We don't want it to be something that they get very excited about and then lose interest afterwards.
Very well said. I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Yasmin Shazly, our Egyptologist. Thank you very much for being with us here on Cairo Local Time.